They called him the man who never lost. But every legend is written in blood, and Julius Caesar's was no exception. From the forests of Gaul to the deserts of Egypt, he didn't just fight battles, he rewrote the art of war. Rome was a republic teetering on the edge of chaos. Politics was a battlefield, and armies were its weapons. Into this world stepped Julius Caesar, a man who believed he was born not just to serve Rome, but to define it. When Caesar took command of his legions in Gaul in 58 BC, he was an ambitious politician with everything to prove. By the time he crossed the Rubicon a decade later, he was a living god, adored by soldiers, feared by the Senate, and unstoppable on the battlefield. But how did one man rise from an uncertain general to a symbol of power for 2,000 years? These are the 7 battles that made him immortal. The Battle of the Sabis, 57 BC. How Caesar defeated the Nervi. An army that almost destroyed him. The summer air in northern Gaul was thick with heat and dust. Caesar's army Vican, around 8 legions, roughly 40,000 men, marched along the Sabis River, unaware that death was waiting in the trees. The Nervi, a fierce Belgic tribe, had spent days studying his movements. They hid 60,000 warriors in the forest along both banks, ready to strike when Caesar's column crossed the water. As the first Roman units began building camp, shields stacked, weapons down, the Nervi attacked. They burst from the woods in a screaming wave, spears and axes flashing, catching Caesar's men completely off guard. For the first time in his career, Caesar faced total chaos. His line was shattered, his cavalry fled, and the enemy was already cutting through the baggage train. Caesar did something few generals could do. He didn't retreat. He ran into the heart of the battle himself. He grabbed a shield from a fallen soldier, called for his standard bearers, and shouted for his men to form up, anywhere, anyhow. His presence alone steadied the ranks. He reorganized on the fly, forming small defensive circles, turning panic into strategy. He ordered his reserves, the 10th Legion, his most loyal, to swing around the flank and attack from the side. Within an hour, these Nervi were surrounded. When the dust cleared, over 60,000 Gauls were dead. Caesar later wrote that the tribe had been nearly annihilated. Only a handful of elders and children survived. It was a brutal victory, but it proved 2 things to Rome. Caesar was not just a politician. He was a commander who could think clearly in chaos and turn disaster into triumph. The Siege of Alesia, 52 BC. Caesar's greatest masterpiece, where he outsmarted an army twice his size. Five years after the Sabis, the tribes of Gaul united under one man, Vercingetorix, the charismatic chieftain of the Arverni. He was everything Caesar wasn't: young, native-born, and fighting for freedom. His revolt spread like wildfire, and soon all of Gaul was in arms. In September 52 BC, Caesar trapped Vercingetorix inside the hilltop fortress of Alesia. But when the Gallic leader realized the danger, he called for reinforcements, and an army of 250,000 Gauls marched to his rescue. Caesar had just 60,000 men. He was outnumbered more than 4 to 1, cut off, surrounded, and nearly starving. What he did next would be studied for 2 millennia. He ordered his legions to build 2 massive walls, one encircling Alesia to keep Vercingetorix in, and another facing outward to keep the relief army out. It was the largest construction project in Roman military history. 11 miles of inner fortifications, 14 miles of outer defences, complete with towers, moats and wooden traps, built in less than 3 weeks. When the Gallic reinforcements arrived, the siege turned into hell on earth. The Gauls attacked day and night, hammering both walls, shouting war cries that echoed through the hills. Inside the fortress, Vercingetorix's warriors starved. Outside, their brothers died in waves against Roman defences. Caesar moved like a machine, riding along the ramparts, reinforcing weak spots, commanding both fronts at once. At one point, the relief army broke through the outer wall. Caesar donned his crimson cloak, the signal that the commander himself was entering the fight. He led a cavalry charge down the slope and smashed into the enemy's rear line, driving them back into chaos. When the battle ended, tens of thousands of Gauls lay dead. Vercingetorix surrendered the next morning. He rode out in full armour, threw his weapons at Caesar's feet and knelt in silence. Alesia wasn't just a victory. It was proof of Caesar's genius for engineering, discipline and endurance. He hadn't just won a battle, he had broken a nation. And in doing so, he secured the conquest of Gaul and his own path to destiny. The Battle of Dyrrhachium, 48 BC. The defeat that almost ended everything. After years of victory in Gaul, Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon River and plunged Rome into civil war. His old ally turned rival, Pompey the Great, controlled the Senate, the fleets, and most of the legions. The Republic was split, Rome against Rome. Caesar moved fast as always. He marched through Italy, seized treasury gold, and pursued Pompey across the Adriatic into Greece. But at Dyrrhachium, on the coast of modern Albania, the hunter became the hunted. Pompey had a superior force, 40,000 infantry, 600 ships, and supply lines that stretched across the sea. Caesar had half that and was running out of food. Still, he did the unthinkable. He built 10 miles of fortifications around Pompey's larger army, trying to starve him instead. It was a daring reversal of logic, the besieged becoming the besieger. For weeks, Caesar's men fought hunger and heat, digging trenches and building towers, while Pompey bombarded them from above. Eventually, Pompey broke through. A crack in Caesar's defences turned into a flood. His cavalry fled, his right wing collapsed, and for the first time in his career, Caesar was forced to retreat. He lost nearly 1,000 men. A small number by ancient standards, but a shattering psychological blow. He later wrote, "Victory may teach, but defeat instructs." That loss changed him. He learned that speed was nothing without patience, and that even genius could bleed. Dyrrhachium taught Caesar the one lesson he'd never forget: never fight a battle on someone else's terms. The Battle of Pharsalus, 48 BC, the day Caesar destroyed Pompey and the Republic itself. Two months after Dyrrhachium, Caesar's luck turned. Pompey's army, rested, fed, and double in size, met him on the plains of Pharsalus in northern Greece. It was August, blistering hot. Pompey commanded 45,000 infantry and 7,000 cavalry. Caesar had 22,000 infantry, most of them exhausted veterans. Pompey's plan was simple: hold his infantry steady and let his superior cavalry sweep around Caesar's flank to crush him. Caesar studied the field and smiled. He'd seen this before. He had a counterattack no one expected. He took 2,000 of his best men from the rear ranks and placed them diagonally, hidden behind his own cavalry. When Pompey's cavalry charged and began to push Caesar's horsemen back, those 2,000 stepped forward with short spears. Not to kill horses, but to stab at faces. In seconds, Pompey's riders panicked and broke. Caesar turned the flank, hit the main line, and rolled through it like thunder. When the dust cleared, Pompey's grand army was gone. He fled the field in disguise. Caesar stood among the fallen, victorious, but silent. He had won not against a foreign king, but against his own countrymen. Tactically, Pharsalus was a masterpiece. One of history's greatest reversals. Emotionally, it marked the death of the Republic. As he watched his soldiers embrace and cheer, Caesar is said to have whispered, "They wanted this, not I." The Battle of the Nile, 47 BC. How Caesar turned near disaster into destiny. After Pharsalus, Caesar pursued Pompey to Egypt, hoping to end the war peacefully. But when he arrived, he found Pompey already dead, assassinated on the orders of Egypt's young king Ptolemy XIII. Caesar was disgusted. He had wanted his rival alive, not executed like a thief. Worse, he was now trapped in the middle of another civil war, this time between Ptolemy and his sister, Cleopatra VII. At first, Caesar tried diplomacy. Then, as always, politics turned to battle. The Egyptian army surrounded him in Alexandria. He had only 4,000 men against tens of thousands. He fortified the royal quarter, turned streets into walls, and used the city itself as a fortress. When enemy ships cut off his supply line, Caesar ordered the harbour fleet burned, a desperate gamble that accidentally set parts of the great library aflame. Weeks passed. His men grew weak. Then Cleopatra arrived, smuggled into the palace, rolled in a carpet. She formed an alliance with Caesar, promising support, supplies, and legitimacy if he helped her claim the throne. He agreed. When reinforcements from Syria finally arrived, Caesar struck. At dawn, he launched a surprise assault along the Nile Delta. The Egyptians were caught between the river and the Roman advance. Ptolemy's ship capsized during retreat. He drowned in his own waters. Cleopatra became Queen of Egypt. Caesar became master of the Mediterranean. The Battle of the Nile wasn't his largest, but it was one of his most symbolic. He had turned a trap into an empire and met the woman who would define the final chapter of his life. The Battle of Thapsus, 46 BC, vengeance, order, and the shadow of power. After Egypt, Caesar returned to Rome a hero, but his enemies weren't finished. The remnants of the old Senate, led by Cato the Younger and Metellus Scipio, regrouped in North Africa, rallying the legions loyal to Pompey's memory. If Caesar wanted peace, he would have to take it by force. He sailed to Thapsus with nearly 60,000 men, facing an enemy equal in number and supported by war elephants, massive beasts meant to break Roman lines. As the sun rose, the ground trembled with the elephants' charge. Most commanders would have panicked. Caesar didn't blink, and he had his trumpeters sound a blare of horns loud enough to terrify the animals. At the same time, he ordered his troops to open gaps in their lines, letting the elephants pass harmlessly through, then attack from the sides. It was brilliant and brutal. The elephants turned, trampling their own men. Caesar's legions advanced like iron waves, cutting through the chaos. The battle was over in less than 2 hours. Afterward, something strange happened. Normally merciful, Caesar's rage consumed him. His soldiers slaughtered tens of thousands of surrendering enemies. Even the elephants were killed. Historians never agreed why. Some say the years of war had hardened him. Others say he was purging his guilt. When word reached Cato that Caesar had won, he took his own life rather than live under dictatorship. For Caesar, it was victory, but it came at the cost of his soul's last quiet corner. The Battle of Munda, 45 BC, the final fight and the last breath of the Republic. The following year, rebellion flared again in Spain. Pompey's sons, Gnaeus and Sextus Pompeius, raised an army of 70,000 men to avenge their father. Caesar marched to meet them, though he was exhausted and older now, nearly 20 years of war behind him. The battlefield near Munda was rough, sun-baked and sloped, terrible ground for an attack, but Caesar had no choice. He looked across the ridge at the enemy and said, "I fight this battle not for victory, but for survival." The opening clash was chaos. Caesar's men struggled uphill under a hail of spears. For the first time in years, his lines began to waver. Seeing it, Caesar did what no Roman general had done since his youth. He charged. He took the standard of the 10th Legion, raised it high, and ran into the thick of battle. His soldiers saw their commander risking everything and followed. The tide turned. By afternoon, Pompey's army broke and fled. Caesar's victory was absolute. He had crushed the last resistance to his rule, but as he stood on the field, surrounded by the bodies of Romans, men who had once fought beside him, he whispered, "They wanted this, not I." It was his final battle. The Republic was dead. Within a year, so was he. The cost of conquest. In less than 20 years, Julius Caesar had fought more than 50 battles. From the forests of Gaul to the deserts of Africa, he expanded Rome's territory by over 1 million square miles, built hundreds of cities, and shaped the modern map of Europe. But his wars also destroyed the Republic he claimed to serve. Caesar's victories made him immortal, but they also made him a target. In the end, it wasn't the Gauls, or the Egyptians, or the sons of Pompey who defeated him. It was Rome itself. His own senators stabbed him to death in the shadow of his greatest dream, an empire ruled by vision instead of politics. Still, centuries later, his name remains a symbol of power. The titles Kaiser and Tsar both come from Caesar. Every ruler who followed him tried to wear his shadow, because in war, in politics, and in legend, Julius Caesar never truly lost. 7 battles. 7 moments that shaped the world. Julius Caesar changed history with strategy, courage, and relentless will. But which battle do you think defines his legacy the most? Tell me in the comments, which battle is the most legendary?